Yes, she's. It looks like it's not streaming, so we're good.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to call to order. Good. I'd like to call to order this Planning Commission meeting of February 9th, 2021, the City of Sebastopol. First on the agenda is a roll call.
All right, I'll start off with Chair Fernandez.
Here.
Vice Chair Fritz. I see you. You're muted, but
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks, Paul. Commissioner Haug.
Here.
Commissioner Kelly.
Here.
Commissioner Ottinger.
Here.
All right. Commissioner Dauch. I do not see Commissioner Dauch. And Commissioner Lindenbusch is absent tonight. And unfortunately, we have had a resignation from Bo Anderson. He had a very sudden change in his residential location and will be moving just outside of city limits, but is no longer eligible. So he has submitted his resignation, which I think has been transmitted to the commission and the council as well, and will be on their next agenda.
Okay, thank you for that update. Okay, we have no minutes for this meeting to go through. And move on to item number 4, which is comments from the public on items that are not on tonight's agenda. If you really wish to speak, either raise your hand figuratively or literally.
Thank you. And you can also, if you, oh, I see someone, Colin. Would you like to make a comment?
Yes, it's EMF Linda.
Hi, Linda. Can you see the 3-minute timer?
You know, I am hugely electrosensitive, and therefore I'm cell phone free, computer free, TV free, and largely electricity free. So I'm speaking to you on my fully corded landline speakerphone.
All right, we'll just tell you when your 3 minutes are up.
Or you can say something about, like, give me a heads up on 20 seconds, something like that. Is that okay?
We will do that. Thank you. Yep. And yeah, so go ahead.
Well, let's see. Well, I just wanted to I suppose give you another update. It seems like maybe I spoke on this subject before. I know I have. Other planning commissioners were there, but anyway, it's an issue that needs to be addressed, and that is, you know, all the electromagnetic fields and microwaves, the pollution, the electrosmog that we're being subjected to, and we are subjecting ourselves to through our wireless devices and smart meters, so on and so forth. The cell towers, you know, or you should know in any event, that we've got a cancer cluster down there at Palm Avenue Homes, you know, from partly from the cell tower there behind what used to be the hospital. And the city did everything right. The city did everything right to try to remedy that situation. You know, tried to engage in conversation with, I think, AT&T to no avail. But the city has done very well with other things. You know, getting all the smart meters, keeping the smart meters out of Fircrest Mobile Home Park. You know, this is just such a great town. You know. And we're leading the way. Sebastopol leads the way time and time again. Well, in any event, so that was great. The city supported the residents who organized with a petition to prevent PG&E from placing smart meters in the mobile home park there, Fircrest, in south part of town, and that was a huge success. They all have their safer analog meters there now. You know, David and Goliath. Sebastopol prevailed against PG&E. And also you should know that Sebastopol, the city, is taken steps to keep the 5G and the more antennas out of town too, to reduce our exposure to radiation as is called for in the general plan. So you all as the planning commissioners need to keep that in mind, and you need to factor that into your decisions when you're giving permits. How much radiation are these projects going to expose the public and the residents to when you're giving the permit? It's something.
And
again,
Linda, your time is almost up.
Okay, well, so anyway, you can get a lot more information about this subject if you'll go online and look at Take Back Your Power, which is about smart meters, and also there's just a wonderful DVD, a documentary out called Generation Zapped. That's Generation Zapped. So thank you very much, and blessings.
Thank you, Linda. Okay.
Thank you. And I don't think we have any other members of the public unless Sunny wants to make a comment, which I don't see since she's muted. And we have not received any written comments related to commission work. There have been a couple that I'll get to later in the update that went to council related to some of your upcoming items.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public comment for items not on tonight's agenda. And moving on to item number 5, statement of conflict of interest from any of the commissioners. Doesn't seem like we have any. Okay. And moving on to item 6, I'm going to start with item 6B, since Sunny Galbraith is here to speak on that, so we don't delay her on there. So the Zero Waste Subcommittee, appoint a Planning Commission liaison, and then also just kind of hear a little bit of an update about what's going on with that committee. And Sunny, we really appreciate you being here or there.
Yes, I'm always here, right where I am right now. Across the street from my friend and neighbor, Paul. Hi, Paul. Nice to see you. I get to see Paul in real live person a couple times a week even. So let's see. So our Zero Waste Committee has been on hiatus. We are going to be having our first, we had a COVID meeting or a Zoom COVID meeting, I think in April, and then we've been on hiatus. And we're back though, next March 1st. We meet on Mondays, the first Monday of each month from 3:30 to 5. And at this point I am chairing the meetings and putting the agendas together, but it's a very collaborative group, really great group of folks. We have ecology rep and great youth rep, a couple of youth that show up regularly, and citizens, business owners, very highly functional and friendly and cooperative group. And if you join now, you get to be on the ground floor of the COVID era Zero Waste team, which is gonna, have some changes in focus. We got busy before we went on hiatus. We put together a zero waste application that people who are renting city property like Ives Park for events have to follow. So it, has a whole zero waste plan. You have to compost and recycle at your event, and there's various things. Of course, there's not a whole lot of events right now, but that is in place for when we do go back to events. So we're looking forward to that. And then we also adopted from Zero Waste Sonoma, which is formerly named Sonoma County Waste Management Agency, their polystyrene ban, styrofoam ban, and compostable, recyclable serviceware from restaurants. And we were in the midst of doing friendly restaurant visits, and then the pandemic hit. And so that's a little on hold, but there's certainly a lot of extra garbage we're creating in this era that needs some attention and solution. And then also some changing needs too. Certainly we want to work on food distribution, or I should say food recovery. We're looking at water conservation also as a zero waste issue, and we're going to collaborate with the new Climate Action Committee as well. So yeah, if you join, we'll get to be on the ground floor of what are our next things that we're going to work on. Yeah, any questions?
I have a question. How long have you guys been a committee or established?
Yes, I guess 2 years now, although one of the years has been sort of in remission. So we had a good solid year. We got a lot done. I emailed Carrie with kind of a sort of highlights of what we were working on. We were also starting to explore ideas for a citywide cup sharing for reusable cups for cafes, although that's probably not going to happen for a little while right now. So there's a few things that are a little more back burner. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, appreciate
I
the
have a
work.
question.
Yes. Kathy.
Linda,
Oh, no. Oh,
Linda Kelly
Linda.
here.
Linda,
I'm on the phone. As you know, the masks are causing a lot of trouble for our wildlife and for the coronavirus, and especially the elastic hoops. And I'm wondering if there's some way we could do a little educational campaign, maybe a flyer at all of the public garbage cans in our city newsletter about the importance of cutting the rings off. So, and it's a very big problem. It's been going around the internet with reminders and also pictures of wildlife that have been trapped into the mask elastic bands.
Interesting. Thank you. I'm as you speak, I'm typing it into our items for our agenda. So I think that's a good idea, sort of COVID era tips in terms of responsible waste management. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know, I can pass this on to Carrie too for our city newsletter, if maybe there can be a section added. You know, I don't know if Mary's the one responsible for that, but
Yeah, that's
Right.
Holly
The
Hansen, but I'm happy to pass. Yeah, that's if you have
oh,
any.
Holly.
Yeah. But certainly if there are tips for safe disposable or things that are with all the PPE that we all have these days, would be great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Was the cardboard bin there by the community center, is that still there for recycling cardboard?
That's a good question. I would have to, that's probably a Public Works.
Yeah, I could ask Dante and let you know.
Just because the reason I'm asking is it's been there for a while, and recently, you know, with all the COVID, been a lot of people ordering from online, which creates a lot of boxes and cardboard and so forth. So I'm just wondering if that's something that I know people can usually just recycle in their bin, but just let people know also that if it is still available there.
All right, Sunny, have you? I know Recology is on the zero waste committee. Have you had conversations about the residential and commercial stream flow of all those things?
I have heard a little bit, and then there was a great article in the PD just a couple of days ago, was talking about how there's been a lot of cardboard increase, and the residential garbage is up, and then the overall garbage amount is down because of business being down. Yeah.
Commissioner Ottinger, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just thinking that pre-pandemic, if we did take out and brought it home, we just went around a Sequoia burger and everything was always wrapped in paper and a brown paper bag and a tissue. It's pretty simple, and I've been shocked at what we come home with, multiple plastic bags for just two or three people, and a lot of packaging. And I don't know whether, I mean, you're doing the best they can, given what the situation, but it just is astounding to think that on a regular basis in the future, they would be continuing to package things the way they do. So just wonder, looking at that overall through our town, whether that's something to give them a grade or something to try to change that.
Yeah, that has come up, and that is already on our agenda, just to talk about that. And then, you know, and approach it with some sensitivity too to our restaurants, which are really struggling. So yeah.
No, hate to complain right now. I'm just
I know.
glad we're in
I
business
know.
that we can get some food that's different from what we normally eat.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, there are some other changes, like, you know, I used to always buy bulk, and there's certain places that you know, so now that's all it needs to be packaged. And
Mhm.
there are places that aren't, for a long time, weren't doing the reusable bags. Most of them are now, but a couple still are not, just because they're being cautious. And
Mhm.
it certainly has changed things. And I imagine that will be a focus of the group as you guys start to get together again, of
Sure. Yeah.
how to revision that in the new normal.
Yes.
Any other questions? And I guess we need to fill that position, right, for planning commissioner. I'll ask if any of the commissioners here express any interest on being on the committee. And also I'll ask Carrie if any of the other commissioners that are not here, if anyone has expressed any interest.
So I might, is it okay if I sign off now? Are there any, or should I stay?
Yeah, unless there's any other questions. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's great, Sunny. Thank you. And
Yeah, thank you for your
Share
time
my
and
email
appreciate
with
it.
folks. Nice to see you
yeah,
all.
I'll be in touch. Thanks, Sunny.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well,
And
regarding,
Chair Fernandez, I have not, sorry, go ahead, Kathy.
just regarding your question, I hadn't really thought about it. I could give it some thought as to whether or not I would want to volunteer for another committee right now.
Do we have I know their first meeting sounds like it's March 1st, she said.
Correct, yeah.
So we would probably, and our next meeting would be,
So your next
calendar
meeting will
front.
be the 23rd, I think?
okay, would
Yeah,
that
23rd.
be enough time if we verified the person at that meeting, or?
It should be, yeah. I don't think there's a whole lot. I'm sure as they get started again, as Sunny said, they've been on hiatus for quite a while, and
Okay,
some of the things they were working on aren't appropriate in the COVID era, so they'll be looking at things. So yeah.
yeah, and then maybe.
Yeah, last time we didn't know, you know, so first Mondays, 3:30 to 5 is the meeting
Mhm.
time.
Yeah,
But I'm sure it's helpful for people who have working schedules to think about.
Okay.
Too.
yeah, maybe we can send that out to commissioners, just see if anyone has that interest with that information.
Yeah.
That'd be good. Okay. Any other questions or
Paul?
comments?
Yeah,
Paul?
I'm just wondering, obviously the committee was meeting, it started without a planning commissioner. I'm just wondering what the need for a planning commissioner, where the request for a planning commissioner to be on the committee came from.
So I think, so that came from the city council, and just understanding that as policies come back and forth between the various committees, and certainly having a commissioner, I believe the climate action committee subcommittee, which I think is being renamed the climate action committee, was designed to have a planning commission on that. That's the Lindenbush. And I think they really appreciated that and thought, and when they were discussing, and they realized they had too many city council members actually on the zero waste committee, and they were running into quorum issues on that subcommittee. They said, well, maybe we can get a planning commissioner to also be part of that group as a way of having tie-ins to leadership.
Okay. All right. Does not have any other comments on that. And Linda, thank you for your comments on the mask issue. I think that's an important point to have brought up. Thank you for that. Okay, we'll move on to item 6A, the Ives Park Subcommittee update. And Commissioner Hogg and Ottinger has been doing a lot of work on this. Really appreciate you guys stepping up and all the work that you've done in the meetings and so forth. And if you can kind of bring us up to date, and then we'll kind of go from there.
And Kate and Kathy, if you want, I can either make you host to share things, or I have your items up and can share them on the screen if there's images or anything you want to share.
Well, would you, Kathy, would you like to lead us off and maybe direct Carrie on your preference for presentation format?
I suppose you could put up our draft so people can look at the numbered items that we considered. I didn't, other than my original statement that I discussed with Kate after our meeting with Dante, we really are in a position right now where we want to rethink where we've been and continue working on some elements that we feel comfortable with, but we also would need to meet as a committee to do that. But we wanted to get you up to date on what we had been thinking about, in particular to see if there's anything from your comments that we didn't pick up that you would like to see here in our numbered items of things that we're discussing currently.
Carrie, is it possible also to pull up Kathy's photographs? Because I think they go so nicely with the lists at the same time, just as a visual reference point, so it's not so abstract.
Yes, and I can't do them all at the same time because they're
Okay.
in the same PDF, if that's okay. But I don't know, maybe
Did you want us to
if you want to go page by page, Kathy, and just talk a little bit about, summarize our conversation and
Yeah,
your
I
and
could
Kate's
just
thoughts.
go through the list quickly. I'm sure people have already read it. I guess I can't go back to the list right now because you're looking at the pictures. I can, and I can't pull up my list. So it's a little awkward.
I can read through the list if you want. I've got the list pulled up on another screen. If you want me to read through the list, and you can narrate after
Yeah, because my screen's picking up with this.
Right,
I'm
I
gonna
think
take
it's
that down.
helpful
Thank you, Paul.
So the first one is the clean or remove the do not feed signs.
Yeah, and it looks like the city staff has cleaned them already. We are in discussions. It's possible they can bring a crew and remove them. It's just a matter of finding staff time since they're so busy with other things. But there is no reason right now because there are no migrating fowl at the site as there have been in the past.
Mm-hmm. That seems
Right, and just to provide a little context of, because why aren't there migrating birds at this point? So some of you may remember, I was not here at this time, but there used to be a dam, a weir and a dam, sort of close to where, and they flooded and sort of made a pond every year, and that was used by the migrating birds. That dam is not functional anymore. It has gaps underneath it, and so if you were to fill it, it would just erode underneath the dam and continue to erode the stream bank. So they don't dam it anymore. That's the context of. So there aren't really any migrating birds in the area. So the feeding of the birds isn't the same issue it was in the past.
So are you looking for us to comment? Do you want comments like as we go through this, or should we just go through the list and then talk at the end, or what do you think is the best approach?
I think if we could just go through it and then at the end, if there were things that people thought shouldn't be done or other things that they wanted to add, we could take it under advisement. And, we just want to get some feedback here on where we are now.
Okay.
Knowing that all of this has kind of changed as we've had our meeting with Dante.
Yeah.
And Carrie.
So the next item is the repair the wood on the stage, which is that image C, it looks like.
Right, and I'm going to be talking with Jim Corbett, Mr. Music, who is maybe using the stage soon to see if we can coordinate some volunteer and fundraising to make changes that they would like, along with making it look nicer, including maybe power washing, and I don't know if we need a handrail on the stairs, but we want to talk with him before we consider other things to do. Mm-hmm. But it certainly seems like that is something that's very doable.
Mm-hmm. The next item is the replanting of hedges where it's missing. So looks like there's several photos of different spots along.
Yeah, I looked at that and Dante was telling us that much of the damage occurs from vendors who are wheeling their wares into the park for events. And people just walk through even though they replant them. But I kind of heard Dante say he was going to do some replanting, which means they might need to protect those areas, particularly now when there aren't events, but maybe protect them when there are. Along with that, there are some areas, maybe we'll cover it later, where we might want to keep the openings in the fence to allow people to walk through at a later time. So we need to be thinking about that. I suppose if they do replant it at some point, we could take some things out to make an entrance, but that's something to keep in mind.
The next item is to paint the lamp poles black.
Yeah, I don't have any pictures of that. That again is doable. It's just a matter of finding staff time and money. It's not something we would probably want volunteers to be doing because it needs equipment and specialized paint equipment. But again, it's a matter of staff time and to do it.
Continue replacing garbage and recycling cans with the black metal cans.
Yes, that's, as we were meeting, Dante said he had some cans they were assembling to put up. And I don't know if you've looked at cans in the plaza. Those cans are three bin recycling cans. And I'm not sure whether we're getting the traditional style that we have been replaced already, or if we're getting some of those, but it's definitely something that he's working on to replace them. And as you notice, many things are on concrete pads right now to anchor them and secure them to their site, as well as to prevent the need for maintenance underneath them.
6 is straighten and paint existing parking bollards. Photo J. Oh yes, those are very crooked.
Yeah, that was something Dante thought he could get some crew to straighten them out. He's not sure if they need them, but it turns out that this particular parcel of land is partly owned by the county. It's an easement with a line right down the middle. I see, Paul, you're shaking your head because you know this, and I really wish that everyone on the Planning Commission could have been at our meeting. Even social distance, they probably could have heard the things that we heard. It was a really great opportunity to learn a lot about this park and perhaps other parks, and it'd be nice to be able to schedule it someday.
Yeah.
But again, that's kind of thing where it could be staff time. If we were organizing a work crew, volunteers could paint them and put the orange stripes on them if they're needed. But I think some phone calls should be made to see if they're needed. I guess at one time in the past, there were car tracks from people driving their cars across it for some reason. It might have just been a couple of people doing it for fun, and it might not be a problem now. So I think it's something to continue looking at.
Yeah, it's interesting, Kathy. And one of the things that I am noticing is that if you look so this is sort of at the back of the Veterans, the Center for the Arts parking lot, looking towards High Street. And as you look down, you can see the concrete wheel stops. Those are there, so yeah, cars don't, just keep rolling on down. And if it came to replacement, I'm not sure. So the parking lot is owned by the county, and leased to the Art Center for the Arts. ASA is probably about 5 or 10 feet of the green area in here. Just to remind folks, this I'm actually working on an agreement with the county to use both their property in this green area as well as ours. In Ives Park is where the new sculpture garden is going all along here, from a little forward of a little east of where the garbage cans are, out towards the street. So I think you would want to probably keep protection there so that you don't have people driving onto the park. But I do, when I see the concrete wheel stops, I kind of go, okay, well, maybe there's an opportunity if these can't be fixed to replace them with wheel stops, and then you don't have the vertical barriers, but you still have a barrier for people going into the park. And yes, that's a little bit more money than taking a backhoe in there and nudging it straight again. And it's also not our property, so it becomes a little bit more complicated in that regard, as you know, Kathy, from our discussions.
Yeah, I think it's
Maybe
something
just
worth
like
talking
railroad
about
ties
to
or something
eliminate.
like that.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that, Paul? I didn't hear.
I'm just saying, those concrete curbs, or even just like some railroad ties, just something just, in the ground that, yeah, I agree, something more subtle than these kind of not so attractive, posts that stick up.
Yeah, I think Dante might have a solution for that. He keeps talking about these not wood timbers. I think they're recycled plastic timbers that he might have somewhere. I need to find out more about those, but that might be a solution for here.
Yeah.
I would also say if the sculpture garden is in that area, that you wouldn't necessarily want the vertical lines competing with the sculpture. So just to concur with what other people have been saying, that, the sculpture garden's a really great new highlight of the park, and it would be really nice to be able to showcase it in a way that honors the artwork that's going to be placed there.
I agree.
Item 7 is remove unreadable signs and post.
Yeah, the picture at the top shows the square sign. Dante says that's a county position sign that they can't read. He's going to figure out how to cut it off so it still anchors the garbage cans, which are also on a pad that you can't see. So that might be something that gets repaired as they're doing the landscaping around the new pathway. But yeah, he can remove those particular signs. This isn't in your notes, but the next picture, L, has something that has a blue top to it in that same area, which right to your left of those garbage cans. I'm not sure what that is. It probably is some marker for power or water. And it's, you don't really see it. It's probably something that needs to be there, but I haven't asked about it. We need to follow up on it.
Next, item 8 is remove some of the asphalt circling the onion patch, leaving the western section for access to future benches.
Right, and for those of you who didn't know, I didn't know, the onion patch is that if you have native onions in your yard like I do, you know what they are, but when they mow it, it smells like onions because the native onions come up, especially in the springtime. And it's almost impossible to get them out, although I'm working on it. Yeah, some of the pathway, especially the picture on the right, looking to the east side of the onion patch, is really damaged there. And in the discussions, I kind of heard Dante hinting that he could get a crew to repair that there. I was concerned about safety. At the present time, I'm not so concerned about replacing it, although I know it was something that was mentioned earlier on in our discussion, so I put it on the list. So right now, my thinking is that we just need to repair that section rather than spend money taking out paths, which may be useful right now. I thought it was particular. M1 is the view looking back toward the sculpture garden. And I took that picture because I think it's a great place to put a picnic bench, picnic table or a bench, except that I understand now because of vandalism and homeless people, we don't have benches in this area right now. But I thought it was a prime spot for a bench, and that's kind of where I would put it if I were putting them in.
Yeah, and similarly, Kathy, there have been discussions in the past about, well, could some of that asphalt just simply be removed? And one of the things Dante noticed is, if there are walking trails where people are still going to walk, like this sort of in this photo, in the upper photo, once you cross over the bridge and head along the northern property line, there's a little bit where the rose garden used to be. There's a deteriorated pathway that leads to the ball fields, and since that's actually a pathway that people use, it just becomes muddy, and then it's harder to maintain sort of the muddy. So it's actually I learned, well, my idea of, hey, let's just remove it doesn't necessarily work either. So
yeah, I was thinking that for now we could leave it for that very reason too. I've walked on it, so yeah. it's good, better to have it than mud.
Right, and that whole north area, how that gets reconfigured to accommodate a wider creek bank if the creek is naturalized is will change that area significantly, I would anticipate.
Yeah, and one thing that isn't on this particular list is fencing to the east, to the north of this area, because it goes into parking garages and things. And at some point, we were talking about fencing, but I didn't include that fencing or didn't think of it as a priority right now. But it still is something that should be looked at long term, so it's not on this immediate list. And
Next item is changing the fencing near the children's play area at the northeast corner of the Betts parking lot. And there's several. One is to make the fencing the same height, repair, replace the bent sections, remove the signs and posts, and add a tree and greenery, move the fence corner about 5 feet south.
yeah, this was one of my original ideas that I thought aligned well with the master plan, in that it eliminated this pinch point where the trail is bounded by the chain link fences, and it's a very narrow point in the park. And that by opening it up even just a small amount and putting greenery, it would be nice. Now, Dante tells me that the tree that used to be there, which is shown in the master plan, is going to be replaced. And the plan is to put in a picnic table, which I actually think is a pretty good idea. So with the tree there, maybe we can argue for some greenery along that fence there. Right now, between the COVID signs and all the other signs, it's kind of ugly.
Yeah.
But it would be hard to argue to remove those signs or to put them in some other place, from what I heard from Dante. So I'm thinking that they can eliminate the height of the fence when they take the gate out and do the pathway work. So we can make it the same height as the existing fence, which is also being repaired shortly. And I suppose we could spray paint it black like the existing fence. But long term, and maybe Kate can go into this later, if there were a fence that we wanted to replace now and not make chain link, it would be not the parking lot fence that you see between the two properties, but all the other fencing could be a nicer fence for the children's play area, which is primarily around the young children's play area because it is adjacent to a parking lot and to a vehicle area. So if there were something that we could begin with that would make that area nicer, it would be to put a nicer fence there.
Next, item 10 is to add benches in various locations. There was a sculpture garden possibility, the north side of the onion patch facing south, which I think Kathy mentioned already, and the west side of the onion patch facing east.
Yeah, and the picture here shows the kind of a bench that is a memorial bench that we could put the word out and people could donate benches. The problem is that benches are being removed from the secluded areas where you'd want to sit and relax and enjoy them because of the homeless situation. But I'm guessing that around the sculpture garden, we might, because it is visible and exposed, that there may be opportunities to put not only a memorial bench, but an artistic, creative bench of some sort to view the sculpture, not to detract from it necessarily, but that could be options for putting benches in the park later that the committee might look at. But this is an example of a typical bench that could, usually they like to put it on hardscape so they don't have to weed and maintain underneath it, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. I suppose it could be on wood chip. So if it were deemed reasonable to put one in, a bench could be put in near the sculpture garden or near the onion patch if we could talk them into that. But I wouldn't want to create more hazard and work for staff in maintaining something at this point.
Item 11 is can the wooden fence at Willow and Jewel be removed? And it doesn't think, I don't think there's a photo of that.
Nobody really knows why that's there. We can all speculate it as to why.
I
I
don't
suppose
think-
before it's taken down, maybe Larry McLaughlin remembers why.
I think, is that this one, Kathy?
Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
I don't find it terribly offensive. I hear it's used for hanging banners and signposts for events, which maybe that's why it has been replaced not that long ago. I remember seeing it go in new. It could be for safety because there's a big drop off. If cars missed and went down there, they'd not only have a big drop off, they'd hit the fence and maybe fall into the creek. I'm not sure. We could look into it further. At the present time, I don't think it's a real visual deterrent to the park, but some people feel it is in that area. It's on the list.
So the next item is change or replace the white PVC curb at the play area.
Yeah. Dante mentioned these recycled timbers that he might have access to from some other use. And he was thinking they might be dropped in on top of the edge of the asphalt to be permanently put in place for the majority of this area. The other area would just be along the grass. So maybe they could be dropped into the soil there to change that out. So that's something that's floating around in his mind now, and we could follow up on it and take a look at that.
Right, and the other component of it, Kathy, is that as the ADA pathway goes past here, if it's raised, then that may also help. The reason for the PVC is to keep the wood chips from running away, basically. But if this is lifted, which I haven't had a chance to look to see if that would or not, between that and what Dante's looking at, that may be able to replace what's there with something a little bit more aesthetically pleasing.
Right.
I think it can be painted, or is that?
It doesn't.
Really
You can't paint PVC, it'll just peel off. It's unfortunately, it's, yeah.
It's already damaged. Yeah, that could be nice there. They don't have it along the fence line. I guess the fence holds the wood chips in quite a bit. So.
Yeah, and the parking lot on the other side, or, outside of the fence is a little higher, I think, in general than within it.
It's on the list.
And then the next one is the High Street parking lot, and there's removing signposts.
Yeah, it's a little controversial to be on our list because it's not part of the park. It's part of the city's property. And I know they've been considering many things for years, which may be why they haven't done anything, except now there are at least 2 or 3 electric vehicle charging stations in the parking lot. And I don't know that right now there are any plans to do anything in the parking lot. I understand that vendors from past events have damaged the drip system. So in some areas, the plants haven't survived. Our thought was originally just to throw some plants in, but of course you'd need a drip system to keep them alive and to put in some trees and shrubs to hide particularly the buildings to the east of the parking lot. So we were just putting that on our list to maybe prompt some funds from other areas to do a rehab of the parking lot. We could throw in some plants and hope they survive, or get the drip system fixed and then throw in the plants. But I think the parking lot probably deserves a new landscape plan of, long term. And I guess I'd like to see it. Maybe we can put it on somebody else's list, or maybe if we can work it out, at least repair the area that's opposite the sculpture garden, so it's a more pleasant entrance to the park.
Yeah, I remember they cut down a bunch of red maples a few years ago that had a mistletoe infestation, I think was the problem. And so they just cut them down, and because there were quite a few nice sized trees in that parking lot, and then now it is very bare.
And there's one more thing about the parking lot. Originally, it used to have reserved spaces, and they had these posts. I think 6 or 7 of them. It's hard to I lose count in my photographs. Can't remember how many there are, trying to document them. But they don't have any sign on them, though. They're just a post that stands up. And it's another one of those things that if they had staff time or were doing some work, yeah, they could take them down. He thought maybe someday they'd be putting up more signs to reserve spaces. But I don't think that's where the city is going on its parking lots.
Yeah. I wonder if that would be a place for like solar covering. I don't know if that's even thought about.
I think it's an ideal location, particularly along the back edge. And you could even put some shade-loving shrubbery underneath it too. And it'd be nicer than what we have now.
And then the next group of items is the high priority items for Measure M and other funding.
Kate, did you want to take over?
Well, I think you're doing an excellent job summarizing, and you're working like, I find it very informative, and I was there, so.
Oh, really? I've invented something.
So I can take over if you want, but I think in terms of, this part of it, I can talk more about the, the Public Arts Committee meeting, and the potential mural. I can talk a little bit more about fencing, but I've been enjoying your presentation, so unless you want me to add anything, I would just say on the High Street parking lot that it is rather unsightly, just because you have a view towards like a bunch of garbage dumpsters, and it's like not that romantic, thinking about being in the park and then looking across and just seeing a row of garbage dumpsters and a slightly graffitied building. So I just think any improvement in that area would create, like, kind of set the tone for the park. If you're parking there and then going to the arts center and then looking at this sculpture, I mean, I just feel like there needs to be more continuity, even if it is like a few trees and shrubs, or it doesn't have to be super fancy, but just some level of effort to be made to connect the parking lot meridians with the greenery of the park. So that's my only comment. But yeah.
And didn't the Center for the Arts just did a couple of years ago, a big re-landscaping project.
They agree.
I think that was a partly volunteer driven sort of thing. I can't remember exactly, but it seems like, it would be nice if that, kind of pulled over across High Street to get to do something, at least along the street edge in those planters. And there's a lot of, it's not some junipers, and I think that's about all that has survived there. It would be nice to, because that landscape around the Center for the Arts is looking nice, I think. Kind of filling in and really growing up, and it would be nice to incorporate that on both sides of the street.
Yeah, I agree. I think the landscaping around the arts center is so lovely, and it would be wonderful to continue that. I just, it's very thoughtful and well maintained. I mean, it's, I appreciate that tremendously.
Yeah, that's much better than like grass it just used to be,
So I'm just going to make a quick note about that, because the designer who did that work has a little sign on the other side. Maybe we could contact them and they could come up with a design.
Yeah, I think the same organization also did the landscaping in front of the Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, okay. I think I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on the list, the other items. What's the first item? And then
that was just fencing, so a bunch of different fencing ideas.
Yeah, it's the kind of the elephant in the room. Everybody hates the chain link fencing, but it's a lot of money to invest. But if there was something that we wanted to do to really make the park look nicer, that would be one of the big things. So we're looking at a lot of options. I don't think wood is going to work, and it can't be climbed, and it makes sense that if we're doing anything, it should work with some of the other fencing in the park. So there's a lot of work that we need to, a lot of thinking and talking and research that we need to come up with good ideas for temporary or long-term solutions, and that's what we're looking at.
And I would just add at this point that the fencing, after talking to Dante, it was my impression that, chain link, at this point is kind of our, sadly, but maybe truthfully, is kind of like our best option. And that if we wanted to, and so if we find the black chain link more aesthetically pleasing, which I personally do, but I don't know how other people feel about it, that we could replace all of the black chain link fencing with all the existing chain link with black chain link, I think for about $60,000. And so that's just, something that we can think about. And in terms of Carrie's is, going to be applying for a grant, hopefully next year in 2022. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Oh, I'm not sure which grant you're talking
For
about.
the funding for the creek naturalization. Sorry, I should have been more clear.
Oh, that is the next time that particular grant that we talked about is, it's an every 2-year grant. Yeah.
Yeah. So she would, we'll get the hydrology report, done in 2021. The grant would hopefully go in 2022. And then from that, so theoretically, in best case scenario, we wouldn't necessarily break ground on the creek naturalization for maybe 5 to 6 years if we did get the funding for that. So so that's just something to throw out into the conversation around the fencing and, options and timelines and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like if it's somewhat likely that that's going to happen, I mean, you wouldn't want to replace a bunch of fencing only to tear it out in 5 years because you're realigning the creek or something like that. So it may just be kind of maintain what is there, and if there's really badly damaged sections, replacing pieces of it. But it might not make sense to replace a lot of it if the creek naturalization seems somewhat likely to happen.
Yeah, and originally, when we were looking at it, we thought that there was 2 areas just as you enter the park that that would be staying because they would still have the steep edges and still need containing. But then when you look at the master plan, you realize that they're moving the bridge. And so those 2 places are only one spot that needs fencing. So whatever we did would have to be redone to work with whatever the new bridge would. And I think it'd be nice if the bridge and whatever retaining or whatever wall there is there, fencing, works with the bridge. So I think that's sort of an idea that we need to keep thinking about and looking at for what we'd like to see there when that does happen. That maybe works then with other places in the park. So yeah, it's real frustrating, but I think it's hard to raise funds for chain link.
Yeah.
That's the problem. But when we get to that other point, it might be easier to raise funds for something really nice. But we need to keep thinking and working about it because sometimes you can make things happen and they can look nicer and be more enjoyable.
Yeah.
In terms of the grant, if we were able to secure the grant, Carrie, how much of the funding would that supply, or do you have any? I know I'm throwing this at you, so you might not have the answer right now.
No, that's fine, Kate. So, there's all sorts of grants out there. The one in particular that we discussed, so the Ag and Open Space does a matching grant program that's Sonoma County specific, and it's specific. The grant itself is a 50% match. So the city, part of what we need to do with the hydrology study is to look at, is it feasible? What would it look like? Look at the cost estimates, and then the city would still need to come up with half of the money for it. So we would need to show that we have the funding in place for a match. So that part of that will depend upon, and it's a several year grant. It doesn't need to be done the year that the grant, so it's 2022 will be their next grant cycle in February and award sometime later that year. And I forget how many years you have to implement it. you don't have to have all the funding in place at the time. If it's, if you're using Measure M and you need 1 or 2 more years, that could be part of your match. But you do need to commit that the city council needs to pass a resolution for their half of the grant.
So if I remember correctly, the original bid from the master plan for the creek naturalization was around $1 million.
I don't have it parsed out and how it could be parsed out potentially, Kate. It is a very significant number. That's absolutely true. I'm not going to, I don't know whether that million, if that's what it said, I believe that. I don't know if that's the full, including capping the, if you recall, the master plan has on the southwest side by the redwood trees, that channel would get covered, and then the rest of the creek would be naturalized once the pathway that goes from the stage areas up towards the ball fields, that is in the master plan, that stays, and then the east side of it, from the east side out to High Street, more or less would be naturalized. I don't know what part of that was included in that cost estimate part of it, if that's just for the one part of it, if it's for multiple parts. And that was also just to, so everyone understands, that was a master plan level cost estimate. It was not a engineer's estimate of what, and it certainly is a few years old as well. So the first, that's why we wanted to, in this year's budget, look at doing the actual feasibility of what the creek channel is, and that'll help. That is something that you can get a more realistic cost estimate on to understand, is this feasible or not?
Okay, so basically the process, we'll do the hydrology report, and then we'll have clearer cost estimates, because it seems like obviously if the city's going to have to come up with $500,000 for a matching grant, I don't know if that's a tenable prospect or not. I mean, obviously I don't know that, but but that may also just then inform us more about how we want to conceptualize the fencing, I guess is all I would say. I mean, unless there's other funds that I don't know about that the city has access to in terms of funding, coming up with matching abilities.
Seems like there would have to, possibly be some kind of active fundraising campaign, in town, to raise money for the Ox Park Creek kind of thing. Because the city's, like you said, not going to come up with $500,000, out of thin air, unfortunately.
Right.
We move on.
Move on. So the next one was a safe pedestrian access at Willow and Jewel. And coordinate that with hedge planting, possibly temporary steps or additional steps, and a new entrance between the park and a possible parklet at that intersection.
Yes, if we use the barricades after COVID in that area, we do need to plan for a way that people can walk down safely. I mean, I'm pretty agile, and yet still I carry my chair right down the dirt into the park, and it makes sense to make it either a better grade or to put some kind of steps in. And I didn't hear a definitive answer. I heard a solution. Oh, you mean like timbers backfilled with gravel? And I said, yeah, something like that. But ultimately, in the grand scale of things, you'd want something a little bit more permanent if the parklet became permanent. And in addition, something else that's going on in my mind right now is that if there's a parklet there, when people enter the parklet coming, say, for instance, down Jewel Avenue, they're going to enter from perhaps that corner. And there's currently a tree and some landscaping. And so we need to plan for moving drip lines and landscaping to make it an obvious place for people to walk, so that they are walking in obvious places, not over landscaping. So that's something to keep in the back of our minds as we're putting in a parklet. People need to get into it and out of it. So kind of keeping that in mind.
The next item was the bathrooms and the pool building.
Yeah, and it's a little depressing because it'd be so nice to make those bathrooms look as nice as the ones in the plaza, which I understand city staff spends multiple times each day keeping it clean and keeping it nice. And you can compare the plaza bathrooms with the bathrooms over at the skate park, which don't get the same kind of attention, and they're pretty horrid. But graffiti and damage is a current thing going on daily at Ives Park. And it seems like right now it would be unwise to spend money to rehab things that aren't broke, just to make them nice, especially, you know, we don't have a lot of events there right now, but it's a difficult situation. But it's on the list.
And then work with the Public Arts Commission for a spray paint mural on the west wall of the pool fence.
Yeah, no, that's what's in the photograph that we're looking at right now, is the west wall. I was envisioning it could be multiple pieces of art, or it could be one piece of art that merges from one wall to the next and all the way up the hill. Right now, the pool is using this as a COVID entrance because you don't have to go in the building to get in to the pool. But eventually that would change, and Kate, I'll let you talk about that too. But we have to remember too that there's a lot of chain link fencing and more of this slatted fencing to give the pool area privacy up on Willow Street. And that area also could make a really nice mural, except that it's used for wayfinding for Ives Pool. But a mural that did that would work as long as there were some areas for the pool to put up its program advertisements and other warnings and things about the pool that they need. It's like their bulletin board. So that might be an area that could be considered as a mural spot if it could accommodate those things for the pool. So Kate, why don't you talk about your meeting with the PAC?
Well, I thank you, Carrie, for arranging that. I basically wanted to learn more about the PAC and then also see, you know, kind of what their mission was. And they're an excellent group of people. They were very receptive. I understood from them that they would be interested in a mural here, a slat mural. They were very interested in making sure that site locations were specified. You know, they wanted, I came with a very vague just sense of, you know, wanting to learn more about what their work was and what they wanted to do and their goals, because I don't know that much about that committee. And they said that they were interested in placing more public art in parks. That's their mission, is they place public art on public spaces. And I felt that we could, if we're interested, I felt that we could come back with a specific site with dimensions and necessary information and present a potential proposal to them, was what I felt. And so if we're interested, I'd be happy, or Kathy and I could together present, you know, this wall and maybe the other wall. Kathy did some excellent research on spray painting slats to create murals, so we could present that information. I felt it was clear that if, you know, if they take on a project, that they would, you know, run the call for artists and, you know, it would be their project. I don't necessarily think that we would, as a commission, have that much influence on what they would select for the site. But I'm sure we could give comments, is what my impression was.
Yeah, and Kate, I can speak to that. That's usually how the various calls. So they've had 2 calls for public art. One is the Nedcon sculpture. And that was actually the first proposal. It didn't have a specific site. It was sort of an idea contest that Ned won, and then they went through the site selection. The one we had a couple of years ago was for the library, at the front of the library, and it could either be a sculpture that from the ground right in front of the front wall on Bodega, or on the wall. And for both of those, they had the call for artists, and then they had a public review. They narrowed it down to some finalists. And then they had a public meeting, and we had votes in the library and online surveys and all sorts of ways for community input to happen. And I know they had a public comment period for the first, and public meetings for the first call as well. And so that's sort of typical of them. I would say that generally, if there's going to be art in the city, the council is going to want to know what the PAC feels about it, and get their recommendation on it, regardless of who's kind of running the program. If it's in a public location, for instance, the Black Lives Matter folks who did the hand print mural on the ground in the plaza, that was an idea that that group went to council with, and council basically referred them to the PAC to work with them and look through their ideas, and also to assist them. That was a lot of the folks in there were youth, and so in that case, the PAC actually had a liaison who was working with them. One of the members who's good at murals, and that's one of her expertise, worked with that group to help them be successful in that. And so that's, that type of interaction would probably be led by the PAC. I think they were open to how this group wanted to work with them. But I do suspect the council would want to know what their recommendation was, regardless of who's running it, if it's on public property.
I also wanted to say I did speak with Ricardo, who's the manager of Ives Pool, and he's also very open and supportive of this idea. When I spoke with him, I just let him know that we were just doing basic research. And I just wanted to know if he had any conflicts with the idea of a mural, and I just basically want to check in with him, and he was very supportive and open as well. So I do feel like this is a project that we could move forward if we're interested in as a group. And I do think it would add a really nice visual element to the park and connect it to the arts center and the sculpture garden, and also to the fact that this is a downtown park that is also like a cultural venue as well, So that's just my thoughts on it. It was very uplifting to think that something like that could happen in the park.
I think it's a great idea, and I think it'd be interesting to have it on both sides of the fence, because it's ugly from the pool side as well as being ugly from the outside. It's ugly all around at this point. It would be nice to just completely spruce it up.
Yeah, I was thinking it would probably be good to just take a test area, Kathy and I were kind of talking about, well, let's just let's pick one spot or maybe two spots and see how it goes, before trying to jump in whole hog in case there's something that we didn't, think about or conceptualize or something, but I agree. I'm open, and, I think for the inside, doing something on the inside of the fence would definitely have to be something that the Ives Pool people would, obviously want and agree to,
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity, I think.
Yeah. Once again, you can see through the fence that they are using that wall for a lot of signage. There's signs everywhere. So that may be an issue, but usually you can work your signs in around artwork. Right? Yeah, that's maybe a bright spot in our work. Is there anything else on that list there? I think there are.
I think that was it.
Okay. Did anyone else have any other?
Oh, I'm sorry. Just the parklet idea, Willow and Jewel. Yeah.
Right, which is kind of it looks like an afterthought, but from what Carrie is saying, it looks like it's probably something we might be doing. So we should,
Yeah, I think there are definitely some logistics on that, but that was an idea of, well, the master plan has incorporating that area into the park. Could you, the nice thing about the parklets is that they can be temporary once we don't need those, the concrete barriers in the downtown area. Could you try it and see, what's it like, and do that sort of temporary expansion of that area once the bollards the barriers are available.
Yeah, and I think it'd be just important to, not just put up barriers and say, okay, here's a bigger park that's just a bunch of asphalt. And I think we need to sort of figure out what kind of activities, what kind of park activities would occur in there, and game tables or
Right. Would you spray paint a chessboard on the ground and have, like they do in Portland and some other places, Seattle, where they have the almost life-size movable chess pieces for people to play.
different things like that, figure out what would attract people to actually hang out there.
Yeah. I've got a couple of comments here. So with the garbage cans, I'm glad that they're kind of replacing, upgrading. One thing I noticed, and maybe this will take care of it, is that there was not much of a coordinated effort. In other words, there would be, in one location, there would be a garbage can and a recycle can. And then another location would just be a garbage can, and then the recycle can would be quite a ways away. So I think just the coordination of the areas where the cans are, that there's, multiple cans there. And if they're going to put like 3 at each location, that may take care of it. But that was one thing I noticed there. On the concrete, wondering, I had brought this up before, possibility, if it makes sense and if it's aesthetic, to put like a trail line through the park. Could be white line, almost like a road kind of lines on the outside, just to kind of break up the black pavement, kind of make it more of a focus on the trail. It could just be, white lines. I'm not sure what, but just as a possibility to do something on there, kind of break up that black pavement, figure out some things we could do there. And then wonder if you give some thought as to any projects that you think might be appropriate for, say, a public work day. And I know, with the COVID and so forth, might be limited, but just to think about for the future, are there any projects, maybe I know there's bark that might need to be spread, or any considerations for that?
Well, we did talk about that. We assumed that there would be some work days for specific projects, but I think we need to work with Public Works to see where volunteers can fit into that, or where it's just not safe for us to be doing that. But I know Carrie has the form, so if we did have a group that was going to work on something, just for instance, the stage with Mr. Music, if his team were there and we came up with the funds to his nonprofit organization, we could help work with that, just filling out the forms the way we do for other city events. But I think we need to work with Public Works on what the project is and how useful volunteers can be. To figure out.
And Dante's advice to, if you're planning work days, to try to plan it for a one-day activity, because you end up losing 50% each day, that it goes on. So the more focused one-day event is more successful. I believe that's what Rotary did when they were doing the getting the Libby Park Sugar Playground site work and mulch and things like that.
Okay. And then we talked a little bit about the ball field, the possibility of maybe, I don't know, if removing every third, sign that allows you to look into the field. I don't know. I know that's a little bit more complicated because they, Little League kind of controls that as a possibility. I mean, that would be an easy fix, but again, it would be something we have to have a conversation and coordinate with them and, relocate possibly those signs. But I think that would be something that could be easily done and immediately provide some visual impact.
Great. That's a good idea. I remember hearing that before, and I put that on my list now to add to our list of things to talk about.
Great. But in that very detailed, appreciate the work you guys have done and gone through there, and really, I think you guys have. This is going to make a difference. So thank you for what you guys have done.
And Chair, we do have a couple of members from the public, so we should make sure to take public comment once questions from commissioners are done.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from commissioner before I open up to public comment? Okay. Go ahead and open to public comment. Any members of the public wish to make comments on any of the park projects or comments? Thank you.
Right, and given we've only got a couple of folks, if you want to unmute yourself, I see Linda, you just unmuted yourself, so we'll go ahead and start the 3-minute timer and let you know when you got about 30 seconds left.
You know, I wasn't expecting to, but anyway, you know, am I on topic if I make comment about the area around the Laguna, the paths? I think you were talking about. I thought I heard something about the path behind the baseball field.
Oh, yeah, the park, the Ives Park baseball field. So right now we're just talking about Ives Park in particular.
Oh. Well, I'll make it very brief. Again, you know, Ives Park and just about everywhere in this town, the issue of our exposure to, you know, Wi-Fi is grossly overlooked. I mean, it is absolutely overlooked, and it needs to be considered. And I have donated a Gauss meter to Dante, to the Public Works, you know, that I think is available for you to borrow, certainly, and find out what like a magnetic field is, because you need to know what these things are. But the Ives Park thing there is, I'm sorry to say, a pretty polluted area because of the antennas on the fire station near there. I've been through there with my radio frequency meter, and it's intolerable for me, as many of the areas in town are. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Mr. Karnacki, did you have a comment?
I do. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, and can you see the timer?
I can. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Go ahead.
Good evening. Just one quick comment is regard to the funding. When I was on the council, I actually brought forward a proposal to do a cannabis tax with the idea that it would fund Ives Park. So that wasn't met with much support, but we did agree to revisit it at some point in time. So that might be one way to earn some money, especially with the matching grant. And the other thing is that the conversation may change a little bit if the county does in fact give the Veterans Building to the city. And there's a very good chance that that will happen at some point. And I think that there was some discussion about the city wanting to do a bond measure and to revitalize that area of the town with the library coming in, and where the former dry cleaners was that's contaminated. It would be nice to do a bond where we could actually try to purchase that property and forward the Ives plan, the Ives Park master plan, which I hadn't considered originally. But the old dry cleaner property would be great for some mixed housing development right there, some mixed use housing in that area, and it would really revitalize that section of the downtown. And I think that that would be something that we should consider in the future. And that's all I really have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Karnacki. I don't see any other public comment at this time, and I have not received any written comments on this item, Chair Fernandez.
Okay. We'll go ahead and close the public comment. And I don't know if there's any other comments from the commission or directions or any questions before we move on, or from the committee.
I guess I would just want to know, you know, it should Kathy and I consider making a presentation to the Public Arts Committee regarding the mural? Is that something that we're all in favor for, or?
I think it's a great idea.
I would agree with that. Yeah, and then maybe, you know, involve the commission as, you know, the Parks Commission, kind of just let us know what's going on there would be helpful.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you for your work on that. All right. So moving on to item 7A, which is the parks budget discussion, which involves Ice Park, but also other parks throughout the city. So I'll let Director Swanson lead us on that.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. So this year's just a sort of a quick update on the Parks Capital Improvement Plan. We do look at sort of a 5-year CIP Capital Improvement Plan. There are a number of projects that are in progress. In the staff report is sort of outlined a number of the projects that were, some of them have been completed, or like the Brookhaven tennis courts will be completed this spring. That's waiting for weather, because when those get resurfaced, they want specific weather. There are a couple of projects which are eminent. One is the sculpture garden, and so the update on that is the county is finalizing the agreement with us for the use of their portion of the land. And once we have that, we'll be coordinating with the Public Art Committee to have the pads installed. I think it's about 8 pads for eight different sculptures along that corridor. And the call for that will go out. It is actually already approved, other than filling in the final dates. Whenever that is ready. And so we're anticipating that because of the process for calls, the call would, the first sort of sculpture would be going in late summer of this year. There are a couple of projects that are somewhat on hold or needing sort of the preliminary design. The Ice Park exterior shower, and the Burbank Farms restrooms. Those are both projects that are looking for additional design and looking at the costs, and they won't be done this year, but we're trying to make some forward progress on those. The couple of projects that we're getting ready to go out to bid, one is the AmeriCorps Trail extension, and that's the extension from up near the community center all the way down along the west side of the Laguna Channel to Sebastopol Avenue, where it will connect in with Caltrans, the sidewalk on Sebastopol Avenue. And that'll be just west of the bridge. That and the Ice Park pathway, the design for that is completed. It is pending Prop 68 grant funding, and the construction for that is likely going to happen later this spring or early summer. One of the things that that project, we have about the total project budget that's in this year's adopted CIP and budget is $120,000. About $19,000 of that is our match for the Prop 68 grant, and that's actually been completed. That's the RHA design, and we have some of that money hasn't been spent yet because for the construction administration component of that. But that the 100,000 or so that we have for construction is not enough to do all of it, and that is something that we had anticipated that, and the designers have designed that so that it can, wherever they get to, can transition to the existing pathway, and then we can do future use. One of the things that we were recommending as staff is, and I've discussed this with both Kathy and Kate and Dante at our subcommittee that met out at Ice Park, is to perhaps focus the Measure M funding that we do have coming in, and see if we can get all or at least most of that pathway completed. as some of you like Mr. Fritz as an architect and know that if you do things in phases, it ends up costing more than if you can just do it all at once. And obviously, it would be great to have it the ADA pathway, which takes out some of those fencing and things closer to the sculpture garden and the parking lot. Completed as the sculpture garden is going in as well. And so that is sort of the major thing that we're recommending for this year. That and just keeping the other projects moving along. The one update I do have is on the park fund balances that play into this. So the Measure M park funds, the original estimate of that one that went out to the voters is that for Sebastopol we'd be getting approximately $85,000 or so per year. It's a 10-year funding, and so we've made it through the first year plus at this point, almost 2 years of funding. In July, as we were doing the several rounds of budget that we've had to do as a city to try to understand the implications of COVID and how that works out, I had significantly reduced the anticipated proceeds, sales tax proceeds, to Measure M because of COVID. I think I had assumed that we would do about 60 or 70,000 instead of the 85,000. To compare that to the first year of it of the Measure M funding, we actually got about $95,000. So we got actually about $10,000 over. So I reduced it by about a third or so. It actually turns out based on the I get the quarterly update on they cut checks quarterly based on their sales tax processing, and we are actually on track this year to do 85,000 or so. So we do have so I've revised our sort of projection for next year to be just flat at 85,000. That means we have a little bit more money coming in this year than we anticipated, and then as you saw in the staff report, we have an anticipated balance of about 50,000 at the end of this fiscal year, and then another 85,000 anticipated for next year. And so that's about $135,000 balance of that by the end of next fiscal year. And then so that and really eyeing that towards recommending that the pathway project, which I think will be a major improvement all the way along Ives Park, be the focus for those funds. The Park and New Fund, Park Development Fee Fund, last year we anticipated a significant proceeds that I can't recall what the estimate was. I think it was about $50,000 of proceeds from the Davis Townhome project. They did pull their permits, and so we did get that as anticipated, which means that our balance at the end of this fiscal year is slated to be about 53,000. The anticipated revenues for the next fiscal year, though, just given the construction climate and projects not moving forward or moving forward at a different pace, I'm not anticipating a huge amount. We don't have any major projects that are already entitled and waiting to start pull their building permits other than the Hotel Sebastopol, and they do have a free agreement with the city that City Council approved a year or so, a couple of years ago actually, and that would defer their park fee and their traffic fees until they've opened, and then would be giving repaying those on a monthly basis. So I'm not anticipating, even if they pull their building permit this year, we wouldn't anticipate starting to get funding into the parks account from that project until after the project is completed. So the Park and Lieu Fund is anticipated to be about $63,000. That does, I'm assuming that the funding that is in this current year budget for the Ice Park Shower and the Burbank Farms, I'm not putting that back in the account. I'm assuming that that money will still go towards this project at some point, since they've been approved by both this group and council. And so just to summarize, there's not a huge amount coming in other than Measure M. So I'm really glad that Measure M passed a couple of years ago. It is turning out to be a somewhat reliable source of funding. It is one of the few measures out there as well that is somewhat unrestricted, in that it can be used for maintenance items. A lot of the grants, like the Prop 68 grant, can only be used for new projects. And the Ives Park pathway, as a full replacement, isn't considered repair. It is considered new and eligible for that grant. But most things aren't for maintenance. And so, but looking at that for this fiscal year, at least to allocate that, we're recommending it to the Ives Park pathway project, based on the commission's last several discussions about wanting to focus on Ives Park improvements. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions and take any comments.
Okay. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Carrie, this is Kate. Just to clarify, so to complete the pathway, what is the total anticipated budget for the entire pathway?
I don't know at this time. I have asked engineering to help us cost estimate that. I would anticipate, beyond what's already budgeted, that it's probably another 100,000 at least to do that.
And so do we have enough money to do the whole thing?
I don't know, and we won't know until we go out to bid
Okay.
on that one. You know, you don't know where
Okay.
we'll try to get a reasonable estimate. So this, in terms of the budget process, I should step back and let you know what the budget process is, and I can keep this group updated. Our budget requests are due end of next week, I believe. And so then it goes to a budget subcommittee, which is Mayor Glass and Councilmember Hinton. They review the various ask questions, put together the recommendation to council, and then it goes to the full council for review, usually in May, late May or early June. Usually, I think here they try to get it in May so that there's discussion. It can still be discussed at length if needed, and then adopted before the July 1st fiscal year begins.
Okay, so basically, if we recommend, like, yes, we want to get this pathway done, we are supportive of it 100%, there's still a slight chance that we might not have enough money to
Correct.
Okay.
In which case, like I said, the designers have designed it, and they understand that, you know, there may be a place where there needs to be a transition to the existing pathway, and so that's built in. They have accounted for that in their design.
Okay, and my other question is, with the Ives pool shower, is that inside where the pool is, or is that on the exterior?
I believe it's slated to be exterior to the pool area.
I bet it's still on the pool area property. It's not like in the middle. It's not in the middle of the park. It's there so that people can use it who are using the pool. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And is there a possibility for them to fundraise for part of those costs, since they do have
I have brought that up.
Donor-based. I mean, at
this point, I think they're certainly struggling just like everybody is.
Okay. Yeah.
With the reduced revenues.
Yeah. Those are my only two questions for right now. Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Ottinger, you had a question?
Yeah, when we're talking about completing the pathway, that's the engineered pathway that we've seen. It's not the things that connect to the engineered.
Correct. It's just that one main pathway that goes from the very southwest picnic tables by Jewel and Law, and then up through all the way to the high street past the connection.
Yeah. Okay, what we've
So it's a
seen.
pretty, I mean, it's a whole block basically of paving
Yeah,
that you're
yeah.
ultimately
There's no
doing.
little
And then the area down by the playground to the pool has already been completed in terms of the ADA access. So that part is also done. Vice Chair Fritz?
Yeah, back to the Ives pool shower, and we may have talked about this before, but I'm just wondering, you know, where does that, I mean, I know Ives pool has showers in the building, and I'm just wondering what this exterior shower is for. It seems to have a, you know, relatively hefty price tag for, is it just a single shower head, or what is this Ives Park shower consist?
Sure. So I can give you a little bit of background on that. I was not involved with the project and I don't know much more than you, but this is my understanding of it, is that, so a few years ago, probably about 3 years or so, the city embarked on upgrading the interior showers and restrooms to be ADA accessible. And during that time, they built an exterior temporary, and it was always built to be just temporary shower for use at the pool by pool users. It proved to be very popular, and they held on to it for as long as they could. However, it was never, you know, it didn't have proper drainage. It wasn't ADA accessible, and in fact, it was causing some damage to the building, so it needed to be removed. So this would replace them with a more permanent exterior shower. And like I said, my understanding is it would be outside of the pool surrounds, so usable by anyone.
So but it is just one shower, it sounds like. It's just like a shower.
I believe so. I believe that, you know, the cost estimate for it, it hasn't been drawn or designed yet. So that is part of the, you know, let's at least try to do that piece of it to understand and then be able to do a proper cost estimate on it. It does include, yeah, any ADA accommodations, drainage, plumbing, obviously, and that type of things. And that's where, you know, what the actual cost is. I think the original cost estimate for it, just on a thumbnail, was like $30,000. Then when engineering manager Henry Marcus, who's now retired, and I spoke about it, he put some more the existing number to it as a more realistic number, given what he knew of the project. But again, this is all before it's ever been designed. And yes, it is. I think it is significantly more expensive than was first thought it would be.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just throw out there that I think in terms of, you know, public benefit and spending public monies, it seems like the Ives Park pathway in my mind is a higher priority and serves a greater number of people than a shower at Ives Pool, which already has showers. No, I don't exactly understand sure, next year outdoor showers may be nicer than an indoor shower, but if they just remodeled the interiors and, you know, assuming they have showers, I know they have showers in the interior, I'm just not sure what the need. And in my mind, if we're trying to complete this paving project and we're, you know, short money, I'd rather take some money from the shower idea personally and finish the paving and put the shower off for, you know, the future. My 2 cents about the shower.
Yeah, 84,000 could go a long ways, a lot of ways.
That's a lot of showers in my mind. I don't know. I know.
But you know, and I am more than happy to take obviously this group's recommendation for, even though there are things that may have existing funding, and let the budget subcommittee know that what your recommendations are. Before we get into deliberations, I want to make sure we do all the questions from commissioners and then public comment though. And then we can see if the rest of the commission feels the same as you, Vice Chair.
I know you covered the trail connection from Tomodachi Park to the west property line. Is that just clearing an area?
So what that is, I don't know if any of you remember reviewing the Davis Townhome project. That project had from the connector trail at that goes from Sebastopol Avenue down to the Joe Rodota Trail, that bicycle path, has the Davis Townhome Project, which I'm sorry, I'll start calling by the new name. I know you guys all probably know it by that. It's now called the Barlow Crossing Townhomes. That is under construction. If you've been in that parking lot, you've seen it's actually going quite well, it seems.
Yeah.
That will have a sidewalk that goes from the trail over to the eastern side, where it can connect in with Park Village and down to Tamagotchi Park. As part of and Commissioner Ottinger rightly brought up, and council agreed and asked for a irrevocable offer of dedication so that could potentially be a public sidewalk in the future, not just a interior to the project sidewalk. The idea behind that is to then, where that sidewalk meets the gate for Park Village, to continue that with a pathway that goes down, that gate could, pedestrian gate that could be open or closed, can then go down and connect to Tamagotchi Park to provide additional pedestrian and bicycle connections to the park, and for, frankly, for Park Village to be able residents to be able to come up into town without having to go out to the highway, basically. So a much safer connection for kids there for sure as well.
Okay.
And so sorry, Chair Fernandez, the $5,000 in that is placeholder for some of the design and initial work part of it. The paving of it would be a future year CIP, and that hasn't been identified yet. So it's not that the whole project is $5,000. I should just there will be a cost to the actual putting in the paving. We're trying to keep that fairly low and fairly streamlined in that it would generally go along the driveway location that avoids the wetlands, and it is easier to do just right off of the paving that's there, but provides a sort of trail connection down to the park.
Okay. And I'm sorry if I missed this, but on the AmeriCorps Trail, does that go to the bridge, and does that include any facilitation to go from either under the bridge or across the bridge, or?
So it goes down and connects into the sidewalk, and actually I can probably, if you give me just a second, I can pull up a map and just show you where the route for that. That will be easier than trying to describe it. Looks like our GIS may be having issues right now. But just to talk about it while I try to get some sort of map up, it doesn't go under the bridge. That is something that in discussions with the Laguna Foundation, there is sort of a informal trail right now. It's seasonal, obviously, because in the middle of winter it's underwater. It is something that they're actually trying to maintain. Caltrans has been very resistant to that, but to any sort of formal trail at this point. But it is something that it is there if people want to do that, and that is something that the Laguna Foundation is trying to make sure that doesn't get excluded at any point. All right, so here we go. I have a Google map at least. So the trail for the AmeriCorps Trail will basically tie into just west of the bridge. And there'll be sort of a trellis entry here. It will connect into the sidewalk, and it will go up along here all the way up through, and then connect in with the trail. This is the original portion of the AmeriCorps Trail right here. And so you'll be able to walk that entire way. And if you do walk along there, the Laguna Foundation has actually already done a significant amount removing invasive species and replanting down there. That is actually part of our match to that grant. And so, that is one of the ways that we work with our partners to find matches for this type of thing too. I think their match portion of it is identified in the budget is $26,000 or $28,000 of the $126,000 match that the city has. And so the city's portion of that is actually only about $100,000.
I know part of that includes pedestrian bridges, because there's a few areas that you can't really cross.
Correct. Yeah, there are some, and they're actually like the Calder Creek outflow, or sorry, Zimfer Creek outflow is out here somewhere. And yeah, so there's a couple of bridges included in that trail.
Yeah. The reason I asked about the bridges, when the temporary city bridge is out, there's I guess no easy way if you wanted to go from that youth park to the other side and walk the Laguna Trail.
Right.
One time.
Right. So you're talking about the this guy right here. So this is the seasonal bridge that comes out every year. Yeah.
That's out. There's really no easy way to go across. I guess you have to get in your car and drive to the other side if you started there. But
right. So now you would at least be able to walk the whole way down here. And then you could come over the bridge. Unfortunately, after the bridge, there is no sidewalk. There's just a shoulder until you get down to here. Long range, one of the things that I've talked about with a few folks, including council members and some of the trail advocates, is potentially, looking at a connection that just comes in right around there.
Yeah.
There are a couple, you can kind of bushwhack it if you are feeling brave, but most people don't. So yeah, so that ideally, you would be able to do that, and then you could do a much more simple loop when the bridge is in, or at least get over there without having to go all the way down to the parking lot by the Chevron station. And
would also facilitate going from the Redota Trail to be able to connect to the Laguna to go to the other side to off of there somehow, because there's really no way to do that now. Yeah, and so this is the connector trail, and so this is the Davis Townhome project for those that you don't recall I went here. And then the sidewalk coming across will come to about here, and this is where the connection down to Tamagotchi Park down here is slated right along there until you get down to sort of the park entry where the park sign is right there. Yeah. It'd just be nice. And unfortunately, yes, you can, seasonally you can get underneath the bridge right around here. So you could walk into the park and go in and then go up if you wanted to. That's one way. You can't do that during the winter. And, even if there was a formal bridge, it'd be underwater most of the time anyway during the winter. So you wouldn't be more concerned about summertime with that, and then being able to connect with that Laguna Trail without having to go on Highway 12 with your bike, which is kind of hazard and having to cross over. So right. Yeah, and so right now that connection is really at Morris Street, where this is the multi-use path right past the bike shop, and then you have a crosswalk, and then you can jump on the sidewalk here to go either up this way or that one. Yeah, you have to go up 12. Okay. Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Since you had that map up, I believe Jeffrey Skinner was working on a trail from Tomodachi Park south to the Joe Rodota. I think
it's kind of there, but not really.
There's a very informal trail there, Kathy. And I started on the Joe Rodota when I first started working with the city, trying to find it. It's incredibly difficult to find from the south. It's like there's a little bit of blue paint on the side of a tree, and then this little trail. And unfortunately, with railroad forest down here, there's a number of trails that kind of come in. Most of them are for homeless encampments, or not actually trails. So it is very difficult. And I have been talking with regional parks. I actually have a quarterly kind of check-in meeting with their one of the planners to talk about stuff like this, and doing a little bit more signage. That is one of the things that's possible coming into the south side of Tamagotchi Park. I will say during it is a seasonal trail in that this gets very muddy, and in fact this is sort of kind of wetlandy kind of area. Public Works can't even go in and mow this area, including that pathway that kind of comes down this way until a certain time because of the biologic resources there. There are some native species that need to grow, and there's some vernal pools and things like that. And so they need to basically wait until the vernal pools, which are frog habitat and some other wildlife habitat, to dry up in the spring. There's also a couple of those right at the frontage, up in here. And so they actually have a biologist come out and they have training, and then they also have a biologist come out and make sure that those are, give them the go ahead that, yeah, okay, they're all dried up, the species are gone, you can go ahead and start your seasonal mowing.
Yeah, it's even
So,
more.
so that is here, and formalizing that a little bit in the future is sort of a longer range plan.
And it's even more difficult to find the trail from the other side from Tamagotchi Park.
Yes.
Walked all over looking even in the village, and so it wasn't. We ended up not finding it, but anyway, yeah. Okay. Other questions or comments before I open to public comment? Okay. Go ahead and open to public comment. Anybody, the public wishing to speak on this issue, or if we have any public written comment.
Linda, I think if you're wanting to make a comment, I think we're open to you, but you just muted yourself, so you'll need to unmute yourself. Sorry, and I'm talking to Linda Berg here.
Yep.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
Linda, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, now, so on that one, on the trail there, I have a wealth of information regarding the number of ticks and infected ticks. Some of you might know that I did a TikTok Tuesday, a Lyme support and advocacy group for over 4 years, held there at the Teen Annex, where we had over 1,300 attendees. Lyme disease here, I'm sorry to say, is it's an epidemic. It's only gotten worse. I've been dealing with it for over 30 years. That Laguna, it's just one more thing that we're rich in ticks. Lots and lots of them. The Ixodes tick requires a damp area. That's the deer tick, commonly known as the deer tick, that carries Lyme and multiple other pathogens. We have the number of people, I can guarantee you, in Sonoma County that have Lyme disease that are not getting adequate treatment. It's cost treatment. The whole thing is costing the county millions and millions of dollars in preventable ill health. So what my point is with the trails there, and I've already done it with the Dante Public Works, along with Larry. We already got some signs. There's a treasure trove of decent information at the state level that is not being utilized or posted. So those trails need to be adequately posted with good information, which is available for free from the state, like Sacramento. I have it, and I'd be happy to share it. But anyway, it's a real necessity. In fact, the ticks are so prevalent down there all throughout that Laguna area that dogs probably shouldn't even be allowed on the trails. I personally collected over 400 ticks on the Laguna de Santa Rosa Trail, probably about 6 years ago, between the months of May and September. That is a hot spot. And so the city's behind me on this one. I've spoken with them multiple times. They will do whatever is necessary to help prevent and probably treat. But it's just hard to buck the government, which is essentially says that Lyme does not exist, certainly in the numbers that it does, and that insurance often doesn't cover the treatment. So anyway,
and Linda, your time is almost up.
Right. So talk to me about signage, and I'll be more than happy to make sure you get what needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
They can give you my phone number. They can figure out how to get you in touch with me. Unless you want it, I can
Thanks,
be
Linda.
reached.
No, I've got your contact information, Linda, and I know Dante does too. And yes, Linda's been great at helping us get the signage up in the Laguna. Unfortunately, the trail that we were talking about doesn't have any signage in terms of it actually being a trail even at this point. But yeah.
I know, I've been on it before. Well, but it needs to have signage, and it's already done, you know, available for free, like I said, treasure trove of information from the state.
Okay, great. Thank you, Linda. All right, I guess that's it for public comment.
Yes, and we did not receive any via email.
Right. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back. And do you need any clarification or any additional comments?
So I think, thank you, Chair Fernandez. If the commission has any recommendations, I certainly want to, get your input on that. I know Vice Chair Fritz talked about one, prioritizing the, if you agree with staff's recommendation to prioritize the full funding of the pathway, that would be helpful. I know the council always wants to know what the commission, as the Parks Advisory, is feeling on parks as well.
And then you got some of our comments made about trails and so forth along the way there.
Correct. Yeah, I don't know if any of those will make it into this year's, their larger planning budgets or planning items, but not budget items. But yes, yeah.
Just as far as
we're
questions.
on the same page there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Guess that's good there. Thank you for your work on that and bringing that to our attention too. All right, we'll move on to item number 8, Planning Director's Report.
Well, are we going to have any other deliberation on the budget or?
I think we were just making comments on it, right? As far as recommendations.
I think it would be helpful to know either if there's consensus or any other comments in terms of either staff's recommendation on the pathway or as Vice Chair Fritz had brought up, the perhaps delaying the exterior shower as a, any of those types of directions. I'm happy to be the conduit to the City Council on your recommendations and thoughts.
Okay. And you want to just maybe summarize what you do have, just so we can kind of as a starting point? Sure.
So I think the big things are focusing on the Ives pathway, potentially delaying, and I don't know if it's delaying or removing or finding alternative funding potentially from the pool in terms of the exterior shower. I think those were the two bigger items that would be sort of a budgetary change, change or confirming the recommendation component of it. The others are the more longer range pathway connections for future planning.
Okay. And Commissioner, how did you have some additional?
Yes, I do. So I feel that we should try to do whatever we can to get the pathway fully funded. And I also think if it's possible to do some sort of matching grant with the pool for the exterior shower. I think the exterior shower at the pool is awesome. My son took swim lessons there. It would be a great benefit to the pool. So I don't mean to, I think it's a great idea. But I also agree with Vice Chair Fritz that at this point, I feel that we need to kind of just try to get the pathway completed, because I do think, in terms of your comment earlier, it will be I think it will be less expensive to try to do it all at once. And then we'll also have the sense of completion with a major improvement to the park, like under our belts. So I support the exterior shower. I'm just wondering if there's ways that, since it's just in its design phase, that we could maybe engage a conversation with them about, well, let's figure out how much this is going to cost, and maybe, we could do X amount. Can you guys raise X? I mean, I feel like there's some flexibility potentially there. I know the current configuration that they had was 2 showers, so which is great. But so I think, I'm assuming that they will again install 2 showers. And I'm also wondering in terms of the Luther Burbank bathrooms as well. Once again, I support that project. I'm just wondering, and I know that it says that the labor is going to be done by volunteers, but I'm just wondering if there's any wiggle room on that one in case we did need to pull like a little bit of funding from the pathway. To support the pathway. I just feel like that should be our priority, and we should be thinking about our budget in terms of completing that project. And then I will say, at some point, maybe we could have another discussion about fencing, because, if we can replace all the fencing for $60,000 and the, creek naturalization, budget for that is, somewhat unclear at this point. It does seem like it, so if I'm looking at a bathroom costs $70,000 and I can replace all the fencing for $60,000, it seems, in my mind, the all new black, chain link fence across the park would look great. And it seems like it also has a public benefit to it as well. So I just want to keep that kind of on the table for people's consideration. And that's my comment. But I do really feel that we should try to complete the pathway this round if possible, just because once you engage a contractor, then you have to go back and rebid the portion that's like left over, and then you have to re-engage them. And, it just seems better to do that kind of job all at once in my mind. So that's my comment. Thank you.
I would concur kind of with that logic as well, as far as the cost wise, possibly, and just getting it done.
Okay. Any other comments from commissioners?
Okay. Sounds like we got it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your.
All right. Now we can go to Planning Director's report.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. So a few things to report tonight. I'll start with the last City Council agenda. They did discuss the Planning Commission composition and have referred that to the Planning Commission for discussion. So that item will be for your formal review and recommendation. That will be on your next agenda on February 23rd. Also upcoming for you on the 23rd, the regional parks, Sonoma County Regional Parks, will give a presentation on the Petaluma-Sebastopol Regional Trail. They are looking for a resolution of support from the city, as they move forward with their process of working with landowners and looking for funding and all of those types of things. I felt it was probably might be a really nice refresher for, I know I didn't, just saw it from the sidelines when I had joined the city 2 years ago. The project was already done. So any of the new commissioners, and probably a refresher for those of you who might have been involved with the process. And so that will be at the next, at your next meeting as well on the 23rd. Next week's City Council meeting, they will be doing interviews for the Design Review Board alternate position. That is the one remaining vacant position on that board. They have 2 applications for that, so they'll be doing that next week. They'll also be doing reviewing mid-year budget, and just so this group knows, there's no changes to the planning department budget being requested. However, I am requesting rather than waiting until July, an allocation out of the general plan fund. That's our dedicated funding mechanism that funds both our housing elements and our general plan updates, or amendments to the general plan that the city wants to do or needs to do. Our housing element will be due to the state to be adopted by January 1st, 2023. I know that feels like a long ways away, but given the numbers that are coming out from the RENA allocations, the regional housing needs allocations, a lot of cities are getting hit with big numbers, and they're starting their elements quite early, and consultants are being a lot of the consultants are getting projects and not having capacity to do that. So being earlier in that process definitely is to our advantage. It's something we are required to do every 8 years anyway. We are on the 8-year cycle, not the 4-year cycle, because we've had 2 consecutive certified housing elements. So that's the only budget amendment that the planning department is requesting at this point. We'll also be giving them an update on RENA. Of course, this body got an update on RENA. Goodness, I think it was December. And what the one update I do have for this group to that, so the report going to council will be a lot of what this group heard at that discussion in November, December, whatever the time frame was for that. I believe it was December. The one modification that has come out with the draft numbers, you may recall the original allocation for Sebastopol was a little over 400 units. And the allocation for Sonoma County, all jurisdictions put together, was about 17,500, with a lot of units going into unincorporated county, which I know this group discussed those numbers at length. The Plan Bay Area 2050 was in its draft stage at that point. In between then and January 15th-ish or so, mid-January, ABAG finalized the draft, finalized Plan Bay Area 2050 and presented it to their board. Part of that actually was working through the allocations of growth projections. They modified those projections somewhat significantly for Sonoma County and a lot of the outer counties to account for both corrections that staff provided to them on the very specific parcel level and area projections that they had, but also to make sure that they were falling within their greenhouse gas numbers. And so the result of that is a downward adjustment in our RENA requirements, or for the next cycle, from 410-ish to 213 units. So a significant drop for us. And for the county, overall, it was reduced by about 3,000 units. And a lot of that has to do, I think, with the greenhouse gas. And, you know, they were looking at places that had capacity for growth, but not balancing that with the greenhouse gas. And also, yeah, I know Sonoma County directors were quite engaged in the process, and we all provided corrections to even on a parcel level data. You know, like I saw a few where they had in the environmental overlay areas were in the middle of a very deep floodplain and high density housing. And so I commented on those, and they had a couple of parcels in the Laguna priority development area in the unincorporated area around Sebastopol. And I tried to encompass and comment on as many of those as I could as well, so that they could catch those areas, and they did a good job of having due diligence to incorporate those into their finals. So that said, the 8-year target is still in draft form and will be until December of this year. However, it's not likely to change a whole lot from the 213 that the ABAG board, MTC ABAG board, has adopted the final methodology. Their step is they're sending that on to HCD for review. And then there's also a number of sort of public appeal periods for cities and things like that. but I did want to make sure that you all got that update. Council will be getting that, both the first part of it, which you saw, and those updated numbers next Tuesday. And then finally, on March 2nd, the Benedetti Car Wash will be going back to City Council as well for their continued hearing. And I think that's it. Oh, the one last thing, because I know a couple people had asked about this, there is, Caltrans does have a sustainable transportation grant. We did not identify any good projects that had the city required match all queued up and everything for that. However, in discussions with the county, the Sonoma County is actually planning on submitting for a bicycle pedestrian master plan update. And so we're definitely supportive of that. And that actually allows us, if we have areas where we want to update our master plan, like the trail connections and things like that, to get those included. And that has not been submitted yet, but that is the larger Sonoma County project being submitted.
Okay. Questions or comments?
And I'll stop there. And any questions?
I have a question just because I was not at the last meeting. Were the impact fees adopted?
They were recommended, thank you, Commissioner Haug. They were reviewed by this body and recommended for adoption to council. They will be going to council. It'll be one of the March meetings that I think it will be the 16th, but I'm not positive on that. It will be one of those March meetings though.
Okay, thank you. And my other question was for the Hotel Sebastopol, did they have a timeline when they might start breaking ground, or what's the status of that project?
I do not have an update at this point, but I can try to get one for our next meeting.
Thank you.
The update, Commissioner Haga, sorry, the update that I think I had given before, which is still, they have gone through all the building permit review, and those are all signed off and ready to be issued. So, which was a long process in itself, since it's basically 3 buildings and an entire block with redevelopment. So.
Good, Kath.
Yeah, I just thought people might be interested in the RENA needs assessment. I noticed that on February 3rd of this year, the Sonoma West Times and News online version had a planning tool or a reporting tool where you could zoom in on Sebastopol or Sonoma or any state or county, I mean, any county in the state, and you could see what the numbers are there, and the cities are ranked. I'm not, right now I can't remember whether it was housing built or housing planned. I think it was housing built.
So yeah, the numbers, I think the numbers they use for that are every April 1st, we have all cities and counties and jurisdictions need to report their housing production. And that's based on to HCD at the state level. And I think that's what those numbers are based on, which is building permits once they are issued.
Okay, doesn't mean something's
so
built.
You can approve projects, but until the building permit is issued. So like Davis Townhomes, that was issued this last year, that will be part of our reporting that's due on April 1st.
So if people are interested in looking at that tool and looking at cities and what they've accomplished, I thought made Sebastopol look where we feel it is, and that it has supplied certain kinds of housing at certain levels and done a good job of that.
Yeah.
So that was the February 3rd issue, if you wanted to track that down.
Any other questions or comments?
He's not here, but I want to give a shout out to Zach. Zach and Earth Tone Construction are donating materials for a platform at the Parklet at Retrograde and Sunshine Cafe that should be installed next week. So that's very generous of him, and looking forward to that Parkwood getting a little more level with the sidewalk.
Yeah, and thanks to you as well. Appreciate it. Okay, I know you guys hate to end early, but we have to do that.
There's only 5 of us tonight.
I know. So there's nothing further. I appreciate everyone's attendance, and hopefully we can see each other in a real meeting soon, but if not, stay safe, and officially adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.
Thank you.